Shalom uvracha, blessing and peace to all of our viewers and friends. My name is Uri Harel, and in the next few minutes, I will share with you some amazing nuggets of information about the Hebrew language. This program and the ones to follow are not intended to make you into a Hebrew scholar or even teach you how to converse with your taxi driver on your next visit to Israel. My intention is to open for you new doors of understanding into this fascinating and exciting mode of communication between God and His people. I'm hoping that knowing something about Hebrew will lead to a better understanding of God's Word and a better appreciation for the children of Israel, the chosen people, who have guarded His Word with excellence in the original Hebrew form for 3,500 years to this very day. In today's program, I would like to discuss the miracle of the revival of the Hebrew language. If you look at history, languages come and end. People come and go. People who are exiled from their land usually completely disappear from the pages of history, and their language goes away with them. We don't have an example in all of history of a people that were exiled from their land, kept the language in a mode for learning and liturgy for 2,000 years, and then revive the language into a speaking everyday language after 2,000 years. This is the only example of such an occurrence in the history of people and history of mankind and languages is the Hebrew language. The Hebrew language is the only language that was revived after 2,000 years of being in exile. And here how it happens. In ancient times, Hebrew was spoken as a spoken language, as an everyday language, of course. And also it was the language of literature and the language of the Bible, the language of study. Later on, before the time of the Second Temple, it still was a major language, but other languages also started to take place on the stage as Aramaic and Greek, and later Latin. Those languages were the languages of the world, and people were conversing in those languages to do commerce, to do other things. But Hebrew was still the language of the land of Israel. When the people of Israel were exiled at 70 A.D., the Second Temple was destroyed by the Romans, and the Jewish people were dispersed all around the world. They kept the Hebrew language as the glue that kept them together as a nation. The Hebrew language kept the people of Israel, and the people of Israel kept the language. It's interesting that at the time, for example, the time of the Dark Ages in Europe, when most people were illiterate and they had to rely on the priests to tell them what the Bible says, and they had no way of studying and learning, they were busy in the everyday struggle. The Jewish people in all of the communities in Europe were teaching their children starting at age 3. The tradition was to start at age 3 to teach the Hebrew alphabet and to read Hebrew and to read the Bible, and then to go on to read the Mishnah and the Talmud. And by age 12, the kid that went through this educational system was probably equivalent to someone who graduated law school today at age 12. because they went through the basic, which is the biblical text itself, and then they went through traditional oral law and interpretation and case study and all of that. So they learned logic. They learned how to read sophisticated opinions and text. So this was the common practice. In the beginning of the 20th century, the end of the 19th century, there was a revival of nationalism around Europe, around the world. And one of the movements of national revival was the Zionist movement, who believed that according to, they looked at history and they looked at what happened to the Jewish people, and they came to the conclusion that the Jewish people would not be safe unless they have their own land in the ancient land of Israel. And they started a movement to go back to populate the land of Israel, which at the time, according to descriptions that we have today, the local population was very scant, very small, and the land itself wasn't very inviting. Jerusalem was a place nobody wanted to go to. It was swampland and malaria and diseases, and was controlled by the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire. And the only reason why would someone want to go there and really start new life and revive the place was ideological, and the Zionist movement provided that venue for Jews who wanted to go back and make a life not dependent on anybody else the way they lived for 2,000 years, and be susceptible to hate and pogroms and all the rest of it. So at the end of the 19th century, there was a movement of Jewish people going back to the land of Israel. And you could credit the idea of reviving the Hebrew language into a spoken language, into an everyday language, to one person, which is also something completely unique in the history of mankind. When one person is responsible, largely responsible for such a great undertaking. The name of that person is Eliezer ben Yehuda. Eliezer ben Yehuda was born in 1858. And he was born in a religious home, brought up in a religious home, and went through the same traditional learning curve of, by age 12, started at age 3, and by age 12 becoming a Hebrew speaker with a lot of knowledge and understanding of the traditional sources, of the Hebrew sources. He went to university in Europe, of course, went to the Sorbonne in France and studied Hebrew more professionally and became very versed in Hebrew, and also learned how to speak Hebrew as an everyday language. He had the idea, he was introduced to Zionism and to the ideas of the Jews going back to the land of Israel, and he came up with the idea. He realized that in order to be one nation in one place, they have to have something in common, which is a language. And I don't think that idea is any different from America picking a language which was English, and that is a uniting factor in the creation of a nation, of a melting pot, nation of people coming from different places. They have something that is necessary to keep them together, which is the language. So with that idea, he immigrated to Israel. And we can see Eliezer ben Yehuda in slide number 4. He was a scholar at that time, realizing that the nation of Israel would need a uniting factor, which is a language. So Eliezer ben Yehuda immigrate to Israel. We can see him in slide number 5 with his wife, who was very instrumental in helping him in making this a reality. The beginning of the 20th century, the end of the 19th century, in what was at the time called Palestine is, you can see in slide number 6, for example, you can see the beginning pioneering spirit. People came, some of them were very educated people. They came from Europe. They came with a suit and a tie and white shoes, and they came right to a place where they had to make roads and plant and dry up swampland and fight the malaria and things like that. So you see in slide 6 the kind of life that was at the time that waited for these people. And Eliezer ben Yehuda jumped right into the fray and started to promote his ideas about Hebrew and about the fact that Hebrew should be a uniting factor and should hold the people together in the land of Israel. In slide 7, you can see what later on became the street that is known today in Tel Aviv, Ben Yehuda Street. And you can see the beginning of the city of Tel Aviv, which is 100 years old now. And you can see the trees that are just planted. At that time, today, they're huge trees and they're beautiful. And those of you who visited in Israel probably walked through Ben Yehuda Street and enjoyed it. We also have a Ben Yehuda Street, a major street in Jerusalem. In slide 8, you can see some of that. It's a pedestrian plaza where people can go in and enjoy it. Anyway, Eliezer ben Yehuda was instrumental in starting the idea and pushed it, created some organizations. That one of them is the Academy for the Hebrew Language, which is in existence until this day. And they actually starting or thinking of new words that are biblically based and Hebrew root-based that can fill the needs of today with technology and learning and in the universities and all of that. So the idea that one language can unite people, and because they're united, they can do anything they want, is not new. We first hear of that idea in the story of the Tower of Babel, when God comes down and he looks at the city and the building, the tower that they built in the city, and he says to himself, one language they have, all of them speak this one language, and now nothing that they will desire will be impossible for them to achieve. And why is that? Because a language makes people unite. When they are united, they speak the same language to each other, they can organize. An organization and technology can give you power that is unimaginable. We are facing the same problem that the people of the Tower of Babel faced at the time. We're still facing them today. We are dealing today with new things like genetic engineering. The people of the Tower of Babel, all they wanted to do is to keep themselves together so they were not scattered all over the earth. And they will make a name for themselves, so people will have respect for them. But what God is saying is he's looking at their doing and their buildings and all of that, and he's saying these people have the organization and they also have the technology to put it together, and the technology of firing the bricks and building buildings from fired bricks to fire bricks. That's a technology. That's advanced technology for the time. You don't just pick up stones in the field, putting them together and making buildings like it was used to be done. Now you have you create molds, and you put the clay in the molds, and you know in what temperature to fire it. It's a special firing so it would not crack. And then you create the bricks, and you create something, mortars that will hold the bricks together. So all of this is technology. It's high technology. And what God is saying is they have the technology, and they have the language that unites them. Now nothing that their heart desire will be impossible for them to achieve. And before something will happen, before somebody gets hurt, I'm going to scatter them, I'm going to confuse their language, and we'll take care of the problem this way. Same thing today. We have genetic engineering, we have all of this high technology, but do we have the moral capacity to really use it wisely? It's nothing wrong with these technologies, but do we have the capacity to control them and to use them in a moral way according to God's laws? And that is the problem. So the idea of a language that can give power to the people was not a new idea. And Ben Yehuda got hold of that idea and was instrumental in implementing it and bringing, actually sacrificing his life for this purpose. He raised his son, Itamar ben Avi. His son was the first boy that was raised completely speaking Hebrew, completely in Hebrew. And his son was not allowed to hear or speak any other language. His wife was instrumental in helping raising his son immersed in Hebrew. And there are stories about how Eliezer ben Yehuda was so strict about raising his son without hearing even names of animals or the way animals express themselves in other languages, only in Hebrew. So Itamar ben Avi, which was his son, was the first person that actually proved to the rest of the people that it is possible to speak Hebrew and to live in the world with Hebrew as a living language, as an everyday language. And Eliezer ben Yehuda, through raising his son in this way, proved that point. So here we have a development of a language from the beginning, where it was given in a holy text, in a divine text. It was a very sophisticated language, and it has many beginnings. We spoke about the foundation of the Hebrew language in other programs, but the way it developed, it was destined to be extinct at 70 AD, when the people of Israel were destroyed and dispersed. But for 2,000 years, the language kept the people as a nation, and the people kept the language. And in the beginning of the 20th century, the language was revived and became a spoken language. And today in Israel, 7 million people speak the language on a daily basis, and many other millions around the world either study it, speak it, or know about it. Now we see a surge of interest in the Hebrew language in the United States and in other places around the world. And the interests come for different reasons. Some of the reasons are religious, some of them are of interest in language, but the fact is that the language is increasing, and there are more and more people interested in Hebrew. I would just make a suggestion for people who are interested in learning Hebrew for a variety of reasons, for whatever reason. I would make a suggestion that it is not that difficult. It is very easy to learn. And the steps that you want to take in order to immerse yourself in Hebrew or bring yourself into learning something about Hebrew is are programs like this one, or just learning how to recognize the Hebrew letters first, which is very easy. There are 22 Hebrew letters. Then how to read the Hebrew letters, which in future programs we are going to go over it and show you how simple this is by putting together the Hebrew vowels, which are very few vowels, little marks that you put above, on top, in the middle, or underneath the letter. It tells you how to read the letter. So learning the Hebrew letters, recognizing the Hebrew letters, learning the vowels, putting it together, and reading. This is the first step. And you can do it for a variety of your own reasons, but one reason I can tell you, a lot of people tell me, I'm too old for this, it doesn't stick, I can't learn Hebrew, I think it's too difficult for me. I don't think it's difficult, and the benefits of doing that will be like any other exercise that is recommended to you by your doctor for the brain. Because we realize today that the brain, unlike what we thought 10 and 20, 30 years ago, that the brain stops developing. But the brain doesn't. If you exercise a certain part of the brain, then it creates the facilities to facilitate that learning, that new learning. So by learning Hebrew, you can teach yourself, or you can help your brain to sustain its clarity. And especially in older age, this is one of the things that you want to do. They tell you to do puzzles and learn another language, or take music, or play an instrument or something. Obviously, Hebrew would definitely fill that bill and be one of the things you can do in order to develop your brain, continuously develop your brain. Now, when we're looking at the Hebrew that Eliezer ben Yehuda created, he created a language that is suitable for everyday life, that people can converse and study and go to university and all of that. But it's all based on the ancient text of the Bible. So all of the Hebrew roots that are mentioned in the Bible are used in modern times. And he created new words, new, supposedly, but they're really not new. He created words for submarine. He created words for camera. He created words for an airplane, and so on. He created the first comprehensive dictionary, the Hebrew-English dictionary, the Eliezer ben Yehuda dictionary, which you can still buy in the stores today. And that was the first comprehensive dictionary that showed how to use the new Hebrew. And it was controversy in the beginning, but it caught on really fast. And by the 30s and the 40s, Hebrew already was the language of the people who lived in Palestine at the time. And of course, later on, became the official language of the state of Israel. The way the modern words were created is really fascinating, because the Hebrew structure, grammatical structure, is already made in such a way that all of the words that will ever be needed they're already existing in the grammatical structure of the Hebrew language. So when you take a word that you need for, let's say, for a computer, and obviously 4,000 years ago, they didn't have computers, or we think they didn't have computers. So where would you take a word for a computer? Now, the computer is called today in Hebrew machshev, and machshev literally means that which does the thinking for you. Now, if you went 200 or 300 years ago to a scholar, Hebrew scholar or a rabbi, and said machshev to him, he would say, grammatically, that word is correct. But I don't understand what you mean by that which does the thinking for you. We don't have anything like that. I don't know what you mean. So when the computer was invented, of course, all you had to do is to go to the grammatical structure of the language and pull that word that was there for 4,000 years, sitting there waiting for the time when it will be used. So Eliezer ben Yehuda was the first person who actually took the time, and his genius was to take the biblical words and create with them the new words that are needed in our world today, and present them to the people. Many of the words that he created were accepted, and they're being used until this day. And that is modern Hebrew. Some of the words that he created did not catch, so to speak. But that's the way things go. So Ben Yehuda is responsible for the revival of the Hebrew language in the 20th century. And this fit is something that was never done before by anyone. And no language displayed that power, staying power, of existing, lurking under the surface for 2,000 years, and then coming back with force that becomes one of the strong languages on this planet. And Eliezer ben Yehuda is responsible for that fit. Thank you for joining us in learning something about Hebrew today. I hope that this program will motivate you to continue in your quest for more knowledge and understanding of God's Word. I would like to invite you to visit our website at musicfromgod.com, musicfromgod.com, to explore some of our products and Hebrew learning aids. When you visit our Music from God website, please sign up for our free, informative newsletter. Just mention that you heard about us on GLC, and we will send you a small gift as our way of saying thank you for your support. Learning Hebrew is fun and rewarding. Just come visit us on musicfromgod.com or call us on 602-48-BIBLE, 602-48-BIBLE. See you again soon, and shalom.